So today we have JJ Jackson. He's a business owner and a music teacher. And he used to have ulcerative colitis 7 years ago. And he healed himself, although it is considered something chronic. So good morning, JJ, and thank you for coming.
Morning. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can you please share how everything started?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was rather difficult to see it coming up, but it started from childhood and the way that I developed my sense of nutrition, where meals were balanced the best that we could in my childhood home, but the access to high quality foods and being able to carry that on into my adulthood was where I didn't quite develop the tools yet. And so when I left for college, my diet got worse and I was eating way too much fast food. And also looking back, I can see that I was really dehydrated and not getting enough water. So throughout my young adulthood, my digestive tract was just taking the brunt of everything dietary that I put into myself, as well as starting to develop some roots of social anxiety as well that would show up here and there.
Yeah.
But music was one of my biggest things that kind of carried me through everything. So I pursued that. And where my symptoms really got worse with ulcerative colitis is when I got into a marriage a couple of years ago that turned out to be really toxic as a relationship for both of us. And throughout that, in 2019 is when I got a call from my then doctor saying I had to go to the emergency room because my hemoglobin had dropped by 2/3 and I was in danger of just passing out at any second.
Yeah.
So that was where the diagnosis came.
Actually, what were back then when the ulcerative colitis was dominant? What were the symptoms? Can you share how was your day looked like? I mean, what are the symptoms? I know it is related to one, not the same, but can you say
I was diagnosed with moderate to severe ulcerative colitis, and it has to do with ulcers developing and internal bleeding throughout the colon. And so my typical day was always in awareness to where a bathroom was, because the urge to go to the bathroom was, I would make at least 10 trips to the bathroom to defecate every day. And over those 7 years, just more and more blood in my stool got worse and worse and worse, to the point where throughout that year of 2019, for almost the whole year, if I'd make 10 trips to the bathroom, I would leave about 3 to 5 ounces of blood in the toilet at each trip. And so I was just constantly
how did it affect the absorption? Were there markers in the blood of shortage of minerals, of ingredients that we need?
Yeah. So I had blood work done at the time, and this is kind of what tipped off the doctors. Was I was just getting into establishing a new regular physician, and I was talking about the blood and things that I was experiencing, and they were trying to figure out if it was like gluten intolerance or whatever. So they were doing blood tests, and the blood test showed that I was iron deficient and vitamin D deficient severely, and my hemoglobin dropped down to a count of 4, where the normal level should be at least 13. And so there I was in severe anemia, and I was told, they called me immediately to say to go to the ER because I had to get 2 blood transfusions
So
immediately.
low iron and low ferritin are
And vitamin D.
And vitamin D. How much was your vitamin D back then? Do you remember?
Not top of my head, but I could look it up here and let you know.
Yeah.
It's on here somewhere.
So it is related to an autoimmune disease usually. This anemia, this low iron in the blood. Is it considered an autoimmune disease?
Yes. Yeah. Also, colitis is in there, and from what I understand, it's how your digestive system responds to it's overworked. It's feeling overworked, and that's where it develops the bleeding and the ulcers. And so when I was experiencing, all that blood, then they called me into the hospital, had to get the blood transfusions, and
Oh,
that moment of sitting in the hospital was a big turning point. And it's where I wanted to make the decision. I could see things more clearly. I think probably especially that I had a little bit more of my blood back in my body after the transfusions, but I can look back and see how the months leading up to me going to the hospital was living through the dark night of the soul.
yeah.
And
So
I can remember times.
what happened there when was your low moment? Do you remember?
So throughout my my then marriage, the way that we were interacting with each other were causing the negative ways, exacerbating the negative ways that I responded to the world, and particularly in my sense of safety and security, and my sense of pursuing my chosen path through life, and that those things can directly affect the digestive system and the way your nervous system works. So that was continuing to just tear down and overwork my digestive system. And I can remember the lowest point of where in my house with my then wife, our bedroom was on one side of the house, and I had moved into the office room where I taught my music lessons, and I was just sleeping on the floor in there because I was trying to create my own little bubble of something that I knew was safe around me.
Mm.
And in that room was where I kind of rediscovered the only kind of community I had immediately around me that I felt safe and supportive was like rediscovering Joe Dispenza and Tony Robbins, kind of other motivating speeches online, and learning more about diet and health. And so it was kind of wrapped up, kind of yin yang, where I was in one side, I was sleeping on this floor, just utterly, my body was turning on itself and feeling like I was completely kind of trapped in this dark hole. And then, but I in that room, I also had these other things like music and knowledge and meditation and things to help me pull through. So then once I made it ended up in the hospital, then I'm just looking back on these last couple of years of my life, like, how did I end up here? Because I had diet stuff and some anxiety forming, but I also, throughout my life, I felt like I had a pretty good handle on my nervous system and regulation, self-regulation. But it's amazing how quick that life can present opportunities to just pull the rug right out from under you.
So also were there inflammation markers in your blood tests? or markers of an autoimmune disease like the RF or ANA, if you are?
No, not that I'm aware of.
You know what you
I
mentioned?
may have to update you with more of the. I have the blood tests at home. I'm just out at away at families for the holidays,
Okay.
so sorry I didn't have those items prepared, but I can get them to you.
You mentioned that you had anxiety to social anxiety, or maybe how did this? Well, we intuitively know the connection between anxiety and a chronic condition or chronic pain, but how did it manifest in your life? Did you did you notice the connection between the stress and the anxiety and the flare-ups and when things went worse?
Yeah. I didn't notice the connection between them right away. I was aware that I was having these different experiences, but it wasn't until um, getting into that marriage and feeling that dark night of the soul period where I started to learn about the parasympathetic nervous system in particular and how that can be engaged or shut off, and then how anxiety relates to your nervous system, and then how your dysregulated nervous system can then cause problems like autoimmune disorders. So it was getting more of that physiology and nutrition knowledge that helped me put the pieces together, and that's when I finally saw the connection.
So can you say more about the change in the plot? When did things started to change? What did you do that, because you mentioned transfusions, transfusions, did you also had medications? Like
Yes, yeah, and this is a good area to be detailed about in this whole journey. So there's the side where I was in the hospital. Obviously got 2 blood transfusions, so stabilizing my blood levels. Just literally waking up that next day was a complete life changer. Just having and I appreciate that about the emergency status of Western medicine.
right.
And I don't see any of this story as like a competition between self-healing or Western medicine, but more about the collaboration between the two of them and when it's appropriate to utilize both. So in the hospital there, getting stabilized, and before the blood transfusions, I had a colonoscopy to explore and to have them make a diagnosis. Before the colonoscopy, they give you a salt flush for your for your digestive system. And I think that, as miserable as it was going through it, I think that also helped to just kind of flush everything out and then kind of give me more of a baseline to then start from.
To reset the system, to calibrate it.
Reset. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not only was I was sitting there in a hospital room, which was relatively safe for me at the time. So I was in a safe environment. My body was having a reset and I was seeing things more clearly. So then I was able to give my mind more of a reset. And while I was sitting there in the hospital, I had my journal with me. And I've always been journaling throughout my whole life. And so, especially throughout the leading up to my sickness and going through the marriage things, that I was journaling everything, and just that's my way of not ruminating on things. So instead of just thinking about things all the time, if I'm thinking about it, I'll just write it out, and then it just kind of gets it out. So I had my journal there, and I was reading back through the things I had wrote over that last year, and just looking back at like how intense and um,
Yeah.
how this wasn't. I could tell it wasn't really aligned with where my spirit or where my free
Sure.
will, was leading me. And I could see the disconnect where I'd really forgotten who I was throughout
Yeah,
everything.
your true nature.
Yeah.
So
And so
do you think that the deviation from the true nature is the root cause of diseases, discomforts?
I would, yeah, I would totally agree with that, because what what allowed me to turn it around so quickly was rediscovering myself, rediscovering my feelings, rediscovering my interest, rediscovering my actual body sensations, and um,
Wow.
getting more out of this top centers and intellectual centers, and kind of bringing things more back, rediscovering my heart, and doing meditations where I was placing my attention throughout my body and then around my body, and it was able to help me build awareness again, which
So,
I didn't realize I had lost.
thank you. Thank you for sharing this so vulnerably. I want to ask you, let's do a distinction between the, the matter to matter and mind to matter, mind over matter things that you did. So you mentioned in the mind over matter, you mentioned journaling, becoming acquainted with your emotions, with your true nature, without suppressing them. You also mentioned meditations and relaxation techniques, right? Am I right? Like,
Yep. A lot of
upgrading.
breathing techniques,
Oh,
and Wim Hof breathing and Sufi breathing, and then the main meditations that I used throughout that process were from Dr. Joe Dispenza, and that's where he one of his big things is that um, he calls it convergent awareness and divergent awareness. So where you take time throughout the meditation, like going into your body and different centers, the different energy centers, and
yeah.
then taking your attention around your body and away from your body and throughout the space in the
Yes,
room.
yeah, yeah. I'm aware to his work. So you did a lot the Botek meditation
Yeah.
and
Yep. And the morning and evening meditations were also really big from him.
you know, but I know many people who healed with these kind of meditations, and but meditations and journaling are not suitable to everyone, because there are people
Yeah.
who become stressed
Mm-hmm.
when maybe their pain is screaming and they cannot focus. Maybe
Sure.
doing a journal can re-traumatize them and write.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to do it, but sure, it's that might not be for everyone. So I was also trying to throw explore as many things as I could in relation to healing and nurturing your growth and personal development and all those things. So I took the meditation and the journaling and the diet changes, major diet changes, and I could kind of put those into a category of like mindset. And so I ended up making this little program for myself where I called it the 4 M's. It was meditation, mindset, and then music and movement. And
Nice.
those were the where I got into more applications, more
Can you repeat
modalities.
it? Meditation, mindset, music, and movement.
Yep,
Beautiful.
the 4 M's.
So were you attentive to each one of them? Meditation, you have to be in attention.
Mhm.
Mindset, what does it mean?
So that's where that was an umbrella for doing things like journaling and
Oh,
shadow work and inner child stuff, and
nice.
setting goals for yourself and reprogramming my subconscious. and the diet changes. So having that mindset towards how I shop at the grocery store, how I plan my meals, how I read labels on food products and that kind of thing.
So you're a musician. So when we come to music, how was your technique did you just sit and immerse yourself in the music? Did you try to be, I mean, listening to music is another form of meditation if you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the initial main way that I used music was just that's what really drew me to the Dispenza meditations was I liked the music that he had in the background. And so like having that interest and kept me going back to those meditations. And then that also got me interested in I rediscovered an interest in making meditation music myself. I'd explored that in the past. So then I got back into songwriting and which got me more into my love of singing. And I kind of discovered a new range in my voice where I could get lower and start to get more into almost like the chant style singing. And so that, which is also known to help stimulate your parasympathetic nervous system. So all these things working together.
Yeah, the humming, the vibrations that you could. Can I ask you also, as a musician, did you also get to explore the binaural sounds? How do they call it?
Binaural beats.
Binaural beats and you know all the music that creates alpha waves, theta waves.
Absolutely, yeah, I totally believe in that, and I'm always interested. I'm finding videos on YouTube, and I've even been experimenting with producing my own, like making music productions and using binaural beats that I produce in there. And I have an idea for a speaker system that would work using that technology, as well as being able to influence and harmonize with the energy centers.
Like
so that's kind of
subliminally.
Well, using headphones to do binaural beats with the brain, but then having speakers in the ambient environment that are also directed at certain energy centers. And I've done experiments where it's and read in kind of other texts that the different energy centers can be tuned through frequency.
Yeah, and of course, and can you testify, because to many people it would sound like a woo stuff, like a mumbo jumbo stuff. Can you testify from your own experience? How did you feel before and after? The meditation, the mindset, and for example, if you were waking up with the symptoms and the urge and the unease and the discomfort in the belly, in the gut, and you started to practice the meditation, what was, I mean, it is calming, of course, if you can tune into it and focus into it and immerse yourself, really surrender to it, it is doing something for the parasympathetic branch of the autonomous nervous system. But can you testify from your, I'm looking for a down-to-earth experience from someone who has been there, done that. What did you notice after you did all the 4 M's?
Yeah, the biggest thing I noticed was just a sense of calm, and where things slowed down. And that's how I would describe it in the most simplest terms, looking back over the worst parts of my sick times, was from the anxiety and from the relationship difficulties and the health problems. It just felt like I was in a kind of like a hurricane, and things were really hazy and vague and unstable and unsafe. And so just that chaos, after I did the 4Ms and rediscovered myself, it just felt like I was back to just being in that calm nature setting that I was used to, that I grew up in.
So
And that chaos
did you
wasn't.
notice that the symptoms subsided as a consequence, like an immediate decrease in the symptoms? Did you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, immediate decrease in the anxiety symptoms and the panic attacks, particularly in the shortness of breath and the tension in the diaphragm area. Those were the biggest things that I would experience in the panic attack side, and that would be debilitating, and tension here in the throat muscles, and that was all related to fear and uncertainty in relation to certain people and potential things that could happen. And to where now I can, where I noticed I can see the change is that I can think about those things from the past that would give me those reactions, and they don't happen. So that's a clear sign that
you mentioned movement and we didn't cover it. So what kind of movement?
Yeah. The biggest ones were dancing. So kind of another relation to music is that I made sure I dance a lot because I love it, and it's joyful, and it gets you to move parts of your body that you don't normally move. And then there was yoga and hiking and working out in general, getting more into weightlifting stuff.
Yeah, I think that walking is known to be very, very calming to the especially to gut issues, to IBS.
Yeah.
So.
And it was an excuse to get out into nature, which is really important to me.
Yeah. You mentioned the tension in the neck, and I want to ask you, for people with anxiety, they many times they experience a pattern in their body, in their being, which they are not aware to it, and this is the bracing and tightening the muscles, the fascia, the internal organs, the blood vessels. For example, I want to ask you, did you suffer of cold hands and feet, like a constriction in the blood vessels?
I noticed some tingling in my hands. I can't recall really a coldness or a temperature thing. But when you mention temperature, it does make me think of I have a sweating thing that still sometimes I experience in just excessive armpit sweat.
Wow.
That seems to be related to a heat thing, but I don't know.
As far as I know, this is a sign of good health because your body produces heat.
Oh, good. I like it.
Usually people with anxiety, they are more cold. They feel the chill, like the freeze, fight or freeze. They are stuck. And people who express their rage or their anger, they are more heated, more fiery.
Sure, and that does resonate with me, and I feel going through my healing process that I feel a more balance within myself about being able to express myself, and as well as see other people's opinions from a impersonal view, which that I used to take other people's opinions personally, and that was contributing to anxiety and the way I felt about myself and causing me to continue to forget about myself. And
Yes.
so those things all played together, and being able to rediscover who I was, what I wanted from life, rediscover my sensations and my feelings and how to express them, really helped to get that balance back within myself.
Yeah.
And there was a book that was really big in that, called the Power of Directed Feeling. It's The Power of Directing Conscious Feelings by Clinton Callahan.
Can you say more about it? Why do you recommend it?
It's a very down to earth and kind of abrupt but kind and compassionate wording, like the way he writes. But it just simply gets you to analyze where your beliefs come from and how that plays out in your behavior, and whether that's through fully and consciously experiencing and expressing your feelings, or having these layers of shielding and the ways that we repress those feelings or inauthentically react to them.
Yeah. Did you notice back then that you had a tendency to absorb and repress your true feelings, just not to create conflict, just not to like you were ready to absorb on your expense,
Oh yeah.
in order to create harmony, to please others, because I know that people pleasers are very much correlated with chronic pain and maybe chronic conditions. So this is very
Yep.
important that you healed yourself of this pattern. So
That was a big thing. Yeah.
let's go.
Getting to recognize that in myself. So
Yeah.
and see where those tendencies came from and know what's the appropriate way to respond to them.
Right. I can relate to what you're saying. I have the same tendency, the same inclination, and it is not simple to change this pattern, especially towards people that you love, towards people that you care for. So JJ, we were talking about the tightening and in that you felt, that you sensed in your throat, in your neck. Can you say something more about this bracing pattern and how you see it connected to your condition back then?
Sure. That was definitely related to my desire to keep a calm level. Like I didn't like conflict in people, and I would I would choose my behavior based on keeping other people happy rather than where my happiness was leading me. And so when I would many times what would cause the panic attacks was anticipating that I might get into a conversation or a fight with my ex, or that
Yes, it's about
something would
anticipation.
happen to try and sabotage something, conflict would come up. And so my inclination was to kind of shut off and not express, and not make a move. I would basically just go into that freeze mode, and so that's where I mainly feel is in my throat and
Yeah.
in my solar plexus.
So for example, when you were, so this is the fifth chakra, the fifth energy center. So did you direct the music frequency to especially to this area, or?
I did, yeah. I focused on all of them. So, and that's part of that experiment that I was referring to earlier, where I that I could think of a particular panic attack I had where afterwards, I first focused on just my breath and also a humming and a tapping thing that I do, and I can explain more of that later too.
Yeah,
But
please.
then I went to my I was just using my guitar, which was the only music instrument I had available at that moment. But I directed the certain notes on the guitar of the strings to all my different energy centers, and I just tuned the guitar to where till I felt it at that place. Then I'd mark it down, do the next one, mark it down, and then I saw what frequencies they were, and then the relationship to themselves of all the different centers. And then I changed the frequencies to what's the closest harmony between all of them. And then I retuned my guitar to where those certain ones were lined up at each center, and then tuned that harmony to where it was like a perfect harmony, and then played all the strings together. And I felt this wash go all over me. And it totally felt like if there was, like a misalignment or disharmony in certain energy centers, then it just kind of lined back up with that music. So that was a really interesting experiment to do, but also to see how quickly it took me from like a 8 out of 10 level of panic attack symptoms immediately down to like a level 4, and then 10 minutes later I was like at level 2, just from the music and the breathing.
So if someone is not a musician like you, can he tune the frequency, each frequency to each chakra, to each?
I think it's possible. It would. I anticipate it would probably be rather difficult for an inexperienced person to kind of get the feeling and have the knowledge of the frequencies, but I think it's possible. But that's what also led me to this engineering idea that I have for an invention, like kind of a contraption that you could sit in or lay in, similar to there's a product out in the last couple of years called the sound bed, where they have speakers. Sound bed. Sound BED. Yeah.
BEAT.
BED.
Sound bed.
Yeah,
Nice.
sound bed.
Ah.
And I haven't used it, so I don't know if you can adjust those frequencies, but it's similar to that idea, where I think the unique thing comes to each person is that each person's energy center is operating at a different frequency. So where my unique idea is coming in is that if you can find where each person's energy center is operating at that frequency, and then in real time turn the dials so that they all line up to a perfect chord harmony. That's
nice.
the ticket. That's what we're talking about.
So we talked a lot about the more etheric modalities, more mind modalities that you used, except for movement, which is something in between, and dancing, that is something in between. But let's talk now about the matter to matter things that you changed. You mentioned diet and you mentioned supplementation. Can you talk more about it? What did you do?
Yeah. So when I was in that period of being in the hospital and coming out, immediately coming out of the hospital, I was, I could feel that had that little bit of a reset. So I knew it was a good opportunity to restructure my diet. And what was interesting is leading up to the hospital, if you looked at my diet, it was all healthy. And for a year or two, you know, I was trying gluten free, I was trying no meat, I was trying all raw foods.
Uh-huh.
And what was strangely enough is that a lot of those seemingly healthy options were actually making my symptoms worse at the time because what I was going through was overactive digestive system. And so
Oh,
what I needed was a break. And so I shouldn't have been, you know, looking back, I shouldn't have been introducing new things, changing things, putting a lot of raw foods with skins and husks in there. So that's just more
fibers.
work on the
Yeah.
digestive tract.
Oh,
So having that reset in the hospital, and then one tip that the doctors gave me, they gave you this little packet about ulcerative colitis, was that in order to give my digestive system a break, I actually had to go on a low fiber diet,
yeah.
which was counterintuitive. I thought I had to,
No,
and before the hospital, I was putting more fiber in trying to help it, which
ah.
was actually making it worse because it was giving it more reasons to work.
So they say that the fibers are the nutrition for the good microbiome. This is why
Oh yeah,
they
that was another thing that I thought was interesting to learn was like probiotics and prebiotics and the difference between them and how um, basically just how to get my diet and my system back to what's the simplest baseline I could. And then basically an elimination diet is what I did as soon as I got out.
so
And
so
so
you,
all I
you
ate was, yeah.
yeah, you stop the fibers and the raw food. So what did you
Mhm.
eat?
Yeah. When I first got out of the hospital, literally all I ate was I made this shake that was fresh bananas, avocado, oat milk, cacao, cold pressed cacao, and cinnamon.
Ah,
And that's
together.
it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So this is what you ate all day?
Yeah, yeah. Most I did about two, maybe sometimes three of those shakes a day. And the only solid food I ate was applesauce, zucchini,
Yeah.
mashed potatoes, and very high quality, low fat meats.
Oh.
That's it. So no raw foods other than just the bananas and avocados, I guess is kind of rawish, but yeah, nothing. You uh, I could, and I did occasionally eat some um, veggies and fruits that were thoroughly cooked. So like the mashed potatoes and the carrots and the zucchini. But if you just cook it way down, then it's a lot easier on your digestive system.
But the common knowledge is that not only starch, but also fructose from fruit can be harmful when you have inflammation. Did you notice a connection between so it is an interesting diet because it is not low carb and it is not raw and it is not ketogenic and not
Yeah.
so this
It
was
was interesting to discover how no there's no one diet that will work for everybody, and you kind of have to learn to listen to your body to figure out what you need. So throughout that whole process too, even before I went to the hospital, I was keeping a detailed food journal of everything I ate, any symptom I had, and then everything that happened in the bathroom. And I was doing that for months leading up to going to the hospital. And then I kept it going after. And I just developed and slowly crafted this diet that was perfect for me, adding one thing in at a time, seeing how it worked. And then did that for
How did
10
you
months.
react to the meat? The meat is very heavy on the system.
Yeah, that was something that was also counterintuitive, is that um, that was one reason why I tried to go with a no meat diet before I ended up in the hospital, and that didn't seem to work. What um, what my body is telling me throughout, when looking back on it, is that there was part of my digestive system that needed to go back to what it was used to, which was growing up with just like meats, potatoes, and a veggie
Mm.
as the what's on the plate. Um, and but I think the iron deficiency that I was going through also was really drawing me to the meats
Yeah.
to
So
build
can
that back.
you say also about supplementation? Did you supplement with iron as well and with vitamin
Yeah,
A? Can you share which supplements did you take in your healing process, and maybe which brands? Because you know it all falls, and there are so many brands, so many types.
I know. Yeah, and that's one area that I still like to do more research on, finding which brands. I ended up just getting most of mine from either like the CVS pharmacy or Walmart pharmacy. So I believe they use like Nature's Bounty or Nature's Harvest as far as brand. But the what I was taking specifically was iron with vitamin C, vitamin D, and fish oil.
How much vitamin D did you take? How many units?
It was 2,000 units, and I took that once a day.
Oh, it's a lot. And
Yeah,
the
you need a lot.
fish oil, which one did you take?
That was from a pharmacy, so that was in general omega-3 fish oil.
Did you notice?
Just one capsule.
Did you
One
notice
capsule a
that
day.
it created a change? The omega-3 fatty acids from the fish oil. I am asking because this fish oil is people are ambivalent about it because it can come from bad sources with
Yeah, yeah, and I can see that that could be an issue. That's why I'd like to be more knowledgeable on the sources of it. But as a nutrient itself, I definitely see and can notice the value of now that I've been on it regularly. I should say that um, I'm currently only taking fish oil. So the after I took the iron and the vitamin D for about a year after the hospital, and then as I was as I could tell that, like I hadn't had symptoms for 8 months and my diet was back on track, I could tell everything was getting back to normal. And so I went and had blood work done and got proof everything was normal. That's when I went off the iron and vitamin D and just stuck with fish oil, because I was normal levels in fish oil, but I was at the bottom of the normal level. So that's one that I continue to take. But I feel comfortable that my diet gives me the proper iron and
yes.
vitamin D with the sun and everything.
So you changed the diet and you added supplements and you did the mind walk, the body mind
Mm-hmm.
mind body walk. So Can you tell when
So
did
one
you
thing on the
make?
diet too is we should emphasize the importance of water,
Oh,
because
please.
that was another thing where I was throughout my diet regimen, I was trying to get I set my goal of getting 80 to 90 ounces of water every day from a
80,
trusted source. Yeah,
80 to how much?
to 90 ounces,
Ah,
which the recommended is 64 ounces.
yes. So, wow. In order to flush and to help the,
Flush, yeah, and I think and to replenish years of dehydration is what it felt
yeah,
like.
this is
Get
important.
my cells
I
back to
think
used to
because
accepting the water.
sometimes because it is so obvious, people forget about it. They run to the
Yeah.
supplements. So actually you were drinking all day. Did you drink it in sips or in?
No, that was that's one thing that I actually learned from my ex-wife was it was that there's a way to be more effective on how to drink water. And so looking back on my past in my life, I could tell it was just I would take sips here and there, and then and have no vision, no like keeping track of how much I drink. Where now I've learned that you want to drink more and drink heavier drinks um,
At once,
in between your meals.
like 2 glasses at once or 3 glasses at once.
Not quite that much, but a half a glass at once. Yeah, a half a glass. If you're when you're in between a meal, and then about um 15 minutes to an hour before a meal, you're drinking most of your water heavier then. And then while you're eating your meal, and then when you're done with your meal, immediately you don't want to have much water. And I could look back and say, as soon as I finished a meal, I would chug a glass of water, and apparently that washes away a lot of the enzymes and digestive
Yes.
things in your biome. So that learning how to drink heavy at the right time, and then knowing when to not drink water, that's been a huge thing.
So
And also like making sure I usually carry a 32-ounce water bottle everywhere I go, and I my goal is to drink at least 3 of those a day,
oh, 3 of them.
which would be over 90. And so
Yeah,
sometimes I get there, sometimes I don't.
nice. And so you did so many measures, many means you took to many paths, many routes
Yeah.
led to Rome, even, and you gave your thoughts to the little details like the timing of drinking water. And by the
Yeah.
way, which water did you drink?
So I grew up in a very small town in northern Michigan. And after I got divorced and out of the hospital and through that whole period of my life, I moved back to this hometown. And that's where I'm currently living. And right outside of our town here, there's a natural artesian spring.
Wow,
That's
lucky
that's
you.
been yeah. So it's and that's where even when I travel, like right now I'm out at my sister's in Massachusetts, and and when I travel, I fill up a 5-gallon jug of that water, and that's mostly what I stick to is the same one trusted source of water.
Nice. This is a privilege because
Yeah.
the water became an issue in our modern world. Reverse osmosis is not considered as healthy as people thought.
Yeah, I've been learning about that.
And bottled water are also, with the plastics, and tap water
Hmm.
is good for you. So how soon did you heal? You took all these measures to heal, and so since and you really attacked the the ball quickly and with so many modalities.
Yeah.
How soon did you feel that you are healed or that you are
Yeah.
starting to heal?
Yeah. And it was in stages for sure. And there's another aspect that we haven't touched on yet, which was the medication, non-supplement medication. So so I was in the hospital and I had the blood transfusions and the salt flush that kind of gave me the reset. That was a big step. Um, and then when I got out of the hospital, as I was starting my own regimen with the 4Ms and everything that I was adding in, the doctors prescribed me mesalamine and um, and a big steroid, common steroid.
Orally? Oral steroid?
Yeah, yeah, in a pill form, starts with a P. I'll probably remember it.
So,
I was preparing to remember.
but now you are off the medications?
Yeah, yeah. So, and this is a good interaction in terms of this conversation here. Is so I got out of the hospital, went back to had my first um, meeting with my GI doctor, gastrointestinal doctor, and he prescribed me the two heavy medications, and he said, you know, you're going to be on these for the rest of your life, so just get used to it. And in my head, immediately then I said, I know I'm not going to be taking this, but I was gonna, I was glad to use the boost during that time. So I took that initial prescription and I took it as described for the first month and then my prescription ran out. Over that month is when my separation happened and I moved back to Michigan. And so my insurance changed. And when my prescription ran out, I didn't have new insurance to cover the new prescription. So my initial plan was I was going to take the medication and then gradually taper off it over 6 months to a year. But after the first month, then just my medication ran out and I couldn't get any more. I couldn't afford to get any more out of my own pocket. And so that's when I'm like, okay, well, I'm really in this on my own then. And so I just put everything in there. But but I had that first month of also support from the prescription medication. So there is that aspect of it. After I got out of the hospital, I didn't have any symptoms of blood for the first couple months, so that was a good sign. I was still having digestive symptoms, you know, while digesting the food. And then I was on my baseline diet at that point. Everything was working great. As I started to add in more food one at a time, I started to have a few flare-ups and started to get some blood again. And then I would just go back to baseline. So whenever that happened, I'd go back to just that regular shake plus those other things, and then wait a few more days, try something else, and then record it, everything that happened, go back to baseline if I needed to. And so after having my reset in the hospital, then it took me about 8 months of that first diet. Just my only focus was just staying consistent on the diet and my meditations and journaling and the 4Ms and everything. That I the only thing I noticed was that I could see more consistency of good days, more consistency of good bathroom visits, more consistency showing up in my life. And then that gave me more confidence, helped me more to stabilize my feelings and have more sense of security, which opened up more of my lower energy centers. which allowed me to do more of the journaling work and the subconscious work and kind of dig in deeper and reset things, rewrite things.
Yeah.
And it was a solid 8 months to a year of that, just that.
Wow.
And
So
that led me up
I am
into about 3 months
curious.
ago.
So your healing process was like this. There were ups and down, ups and down, ups and down, till you healed completely. So anytime
Yeah.
that you had a relapse or a dip in the curve, what was your inner self-talk? Because many people
Yeah.
despair in this phase.
Yeah.
They feel again, wow, I am doomed. I am doing all these efforts and I am relapsing.
Yeah.
How did you encourage yourself? What did you tell yourself?
Yeah. I remember the first time, about 3 months after I had been on my baseline diet with no blood symptoms. It had been about 3 months, and then I had a flare up. And the first time I saw blood in the toilet again, I had a minor panic attack for about 10 seconds because it kind of felt like that all this progress I had made had just been lost. But the thing I noticed was that in those 10 seconds, I only experienced the panic attack for about 3 seconds, and the other 7 seconds I was watching myself have the panic attack. So I could see that I had that separation, that detachment,
Uh-huh.
that conscious awareness detachment, and
How
and
did this contribute to, like, when you diffused yourself from the experience and not identified with it, how did this contributed to your healing?
that's where that gave me a benchmark and something to be able to analyze as I was going through my process, to know like how much awareness I was building within myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I had developed good awareness before. I believe I did, and then all this stuff in the life happened, caused me to forget myself. I realized I had lost that awareness in myself. So having that one little panic attack detachment started to show me that I was building that awareness back, and then I connected that to
Mm-hmm.
what does that feel like in my body. And that was a big thing that I learned from the Joe Dispenza meditations, was he's always reminding you to memorize what you're feeling in your heart space, in your lower centers, or I should say middle centers, and not just being up in your mind the whole time.
Yeah.
And so as I was feeling that detachment during that panic attack flare up, then I could say, okay, what's this detachment feel like? And then I could memorize that detachment feeling and then reapply it. I could always search for that. So then if I'd ever have say something with a client, part of my fears that were laying over at that time would show up as like when I'm with one of my business clients, like wondering if they're going to stay with me as a client, or
Yes.
fearing that every month they're going to leave.
Yeah, it's
And
fear.
then I recognize that and then see that happening. And then I step around it rather than being in that feeling.
So witnessing it gave you a space to make the right decision.
Yep.
Whether it is to continue with the client and absorb, or to be more loyal to yourself. Can I ask you, if someone is hearing you? I mean, you are describing in such detail a beautiful healing story, and now you are free of this disease, and free of the medications, and even free of most of your supplements. Can you give an advice to someone who is experience gut issues or any other chronic condition, and they are despairing and they feel the doom and gloom, what would you tell them from your own experience, personal experience?
Yeah. Yeah. I would sum it up in one question: is what do you want? And primarily focusing on what you means to yourself, because the biggest things that I saw in myself, and I see similar things that show up in other people, is operating from some sort of misguidedness or sense of inauthenticity, where you're not operating from your true desires. And so whether you're at day one of a heavy illness, or you're in your journey at some point, whenever you're experiencing something, if you can get back in yourself and say, what do I want in this moment? Whether that's a quiet place with no people, whether that's a better meal, whether that's a good conversation with somebody, is what do you want? Not what would make somebody else happy, not what does society expect of me. I think a lot of our everyday life that we experience with each other is trying to live up to some other expectation.
You know what, JJ, I'm very grateful for what you said now, because many people with usually highly sensitive people, and I can see that you are one of these. Many people, you know, empaths, people that are empathetic, it is a very difficult thing to them to claim what they authentically want, what they are genuinely want, and act upon this, because then immediately comes, they are riddled with guilt. I mean, it is an undeserved guilt. It's very insidious. It is not a guilt that they should feel, but it is also a pattern, a thought pattern, and guilt is, of course, connected to anxiety. And
absolutely, that's such a good point to bring up.
Yeah, so JJ, I am curious about your journey, your self-growth in this area of stopping, asking yourself, what do I really want? And what do I mean to myself? Am I worthy of doing what I want and not live because of, it can be even hidden voices from the past, that you should be good, that you should be loving, that you should give without boundaries. So when this guilt monster started to raise, whenever you were in your way to claim and do what you want, how did you tackle it? How did you address it? The tyranny of the superego, the tyranny of this conscientiousness, you say? Being too conscientious, too having too much.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of felt like walking on eggshells, or being on the edge of that limb or on the edge of that cliff, ready to jump off and fly, but you're scared for the person next to you who's scared of you, even though you're ready to do it, but you don't want them to be uncomfortable with it. And that guilt, I didn't realize how much of that guilt was taking place in the background, that was influencing my decisions. And when part of my healing before I went to the hospital was starting to recognize that as I was doing shadow work and inner child stuff.
Yes.
And but there was an interesting moment that had guilt in it, even after the hospital, after I'd been rewriting my subconscious, forming my kind of new life vision, where I had realized the importance of asking myself, what do I want? And even after the first few times, I still I realized I couldn't figure it out. And
Yes,
I realized that after 37 years, I still didn't even know, really. Like, I had ideas, I knew things I liked, but one, being able to ask yourself, what do I want, is a big thing to step out and do. And then to confront the fact that you're vulnerable enough to ask yourself that, and then to realize that you don't have an answer, that was equally as disorienting.
that's right. Because
But
we get confused. If you
yeah, it
are,
was confusing
Mhm.
because it felt like I knew I had rediscovered so much of myself that I felt like I should have more of an idea back then than I did. And I have way more of an idea now, but I have more experience to know that I shouldn't expect to have all the answers. Part of the fun is being open enough to go out and explore and to jump off that cliff, no matter if anybody else is around there screaming, because I know I want to go out and fly.
Yeah.
And
So
that,
now let's say now if someone asks you a favor and
mhm.
your genuine self, your true nature says, no, I don't feel like doing it. But then comes the voices of, I will lose him, I will lose his friendship, he will not like me. One day I will need him and he will not be there for me. All these kind of voices, which are, we are wired to think like this. So how different you are now when you are when you grew, and I mean when you made the work of self-development, self-growth. So how would you address such a dilemma now? And how this is related to attaining your health?
Yeah, yeah. The easiest way to say that would be awareness, is getting back to awareness of who I am and where my spirit's calling me and how my spirit interacts with this body and the sensations that it has and the emotions that it has, and being aware of those different voices of recognizing where my intuition is versus my ego. um, and when situations come up that where someone else could potentially be disappointed with my decision, I have a much better awareness of my radar of these second and third energy centers to know when I can experience the slightest tension in my third center now. Like the most minute tension. So that's one. Like, if there's any tension happening in my solar plexus, then I know
Ah,
something. I have to address something. So having that awareness in my body and
aha.
awareness of my stability as far as like my path through life, and knowing that I'm making these steps for myself. I have the love and compassion for everyone around me. And I also realize that every request that comes to me isn't going to get fulfilled, especially if it's not aligned with where I'm making my steps. So I'm making my steps, and I'm happy to extend myself as much as I can, as long as I'm not compromising where I'm making my steps,
So
and having that
actually,
awareness to know.
this is so good. Actually, you are saying, and please correct me if I am wrong. You are ready to pay the price of losing someone, or losing their affection, or losing their good opinion about you, like make a deliberate decision. Yes, I might pay a price here, but I will go with my gut, with my solar plexus.
Yep. Yep. I remember having a thought on this while I was driving once, and as I was learning about where I had developed people pleasing tendencies and that kind of thing, I learned that to flip that feeling
Yes.
around to where instead of reacting as in like, oh no, they could be disappointed, what can I do to make sure they're okay, I flipped it around to saying I should embrace the opportunity to disappoint someone else, knowing that I'm being my most authentic self.
I love it.
So
I love it.
if
Yeah.
someone's disappointed, that's just a sign that I'm being truthful with myself.
So except
Embrace the opportunity to disappoint others.
So instead of being resentful to that person and or being passive aggressive or being doing what he asks you and feel the grit, you are now actually blessing him for giving you the opportunity and so you have less tension, less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much less tension.
That's nice. That's so good. I am really grateful for this part that you talked about how you tamed your superego. Last question, which is relating to it, because I think this is the juicy stuff of this interview. How is this related? How this capacity, how this ability, how this skill of attuning to your true nature, to your true authentic will. And I think the third chakra is, the third energy center is about the will. So how is this connected, in your opinion, to staying whole and healthy? Or we can phrase it on the via negativa, like if how someone who is a people pleaser and is repressing his own needs and own emotions and own wills and denying them, how he will end up probably with a chronic condition. How do you explain it? I mean, it sounds so intuitive, but I want to have it in your words, please.
Yeah. It makes me think of trying to walk through a dense forest in the pitch black of night when there's no moon, and you're expecting to be able to walk through the forest without running into any branches. Out of what? You have no reason to expect that unless you have some sort of light to help you see, or some sort of awareness of where the trees and the branches are. And if you can't shine a light on anything, if you don't have any awareness, you're just going to run into stuff. It's just inevitable. So if you don't, I was going to say, if you don't address yourself, then you can't understand, but it's not, I don't see it as that much of a kind of like a make it or break it sort of guilty thing. Actually, it's more like the comfort and the health, that ideal life that you want is inside you. It's not outside you. So if you're using work or other people or people pleasing or vices or TV or anything outside you to give you that sense of what your life is, then you're always going to end up chasing after something.
Nice.
So that wholeness that you want is inside you to guide you to where you need to be to experience that ideal life. So it could be worded as, if you don't look, you're going to inevitably run into something. Also, on the other side of that coin is that if you can find the space within yourself to just shine a little light, or to use some of your awareness to kind of feel your way around, then you're only going to find helpful things, I think. And then the more you do that a little bit, then you get easier to do it. And it's like the home is always waiting within you, but you have to be able to open the door within yourself to be able to step inside.
Isn't it tragic that most of us are chasing outside and looking for distractions to numb the emotional pain? I loved your analogy, your metaphor, and about the walking in the dark forest. And I mean, the simplistic explanation to my question would be that, for example, you had an autoimmune disease, which is the body attacking itself, not discerning that he is attacking yourself, and it might be a manifestation of this behavior of not attuning to yourself and just catering to others' needs and putting them above your needs, above your own.
Yeah. So on the opposite side of that awareness that I was just describing, if you choose non-action of exploring yourself, and if you use the regular response, like the regular ways that society teaches us to respond to things, which is to ignore and repress things, if you use those on a regular basis to ignore the signs that come from life and come from your body, that's telling you whether something is a good thing to do, good thing to put in your body, good thing to say, good thing to agree to or not, then if you ignore that, then the signs are just going to get stronger to try and keep telling you it.
Go back home.
And one day you're just going to end, they're going to get stronger till you end up in the hospital or worse.
Well, your ideas, your insights about this are so valuable, especially because they are coming from someone who has been there, done that. I am very grateful to you, JJ. There was a lot I wanted to talk about you more, but maybe in another time. Thank you for...
I really enjoyed talking with you, and I appreciate the chance to do this, and I would be happy to continue this later, and I could, especially when I get back and have more of my like medical records, we might be able to get some more details going.
Let's do it, JJ. I wish you nothing but health and joy and feeling at home under your skin like you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I wish the same for you.
Thank you so much.